The sun was dipping low over the city of Baltimore, casting long shadows across the cracked pavement of East Lexington Street. The air was thick with the late summer humidity, the kind that made your clothes cling to your skin and your patience wear thin. Inside the dimly lit corner diner, Mama Rosa's, the clatter of plates and the hum of conversation filled the space. It was a place where locals gathered, cops, teachers, office workers, and retirees drawn by the smell of fried chicken and the promise of a cheap, hearty meal. At a small table near the window sat Dr. Aisha Coleman, a 42-year-old black woman whose presence commanded attention, even in a room full of noise. Her tailored blazer and sharp posture spoke of authority, but her warm smile softened the edges. Aisha was no stranger to scrutiny. As the Director of Internal Affairs for the Baltimore Police Department, she had spent the last decade holding officers accountable, rooting out corruption, and pushing for reform in a system that often resisted change. Her work had earned her respect, but it had also made her enemies, some in uniform, some in the shadows. Tonight, though, Aisha wasn't thinking about work. She was here for a rare moment of peace, a chance to enjoy a meal with her teenage daughter, Maya, who sat across from her, scrolling through her phone with earbuds dangling. Aisha sipped her iced tea, savoring the quiet companionship. The diner was crowded, the kind of evening where every seat was taken, and the waitstaff darted between tables, balancing trays and tempers. The trouble started over something small. It always does. Officer Daniel Hargrove pushed through the diner's glass door, his police uniform crisp despite the long shift. At 38, Hargrove was a veteran of the force, a man who wore his badge like a crown and carried himself with the swagger of someone who believed he owned every room he entered. His blonde hair was cropped short, his jaw set in a permanent scowl. To him, Mama Rosa's was his turf, a place where he expected deference. A nod from the staff, a table cleared without question. Tonight, though, the diner was packed, and Hargrove's mood was already sour from a day of paperwork and a chewing out from his sergeant. He scanned the room, his eyes landing on a small table in the corner. It was occupied by a middle-aged black couple, quietly eating their meal. Hargrove's lip curled. He didn't recognize them. Didn't care to. All he saw was an inconvenience. He strode over, his boots heavy on the linoleum floor, and leaned over their table. "You folks done here?" he asked, his voice loud enough to cut through the diner's hum. It wasn't a question, it was a command. The man, a wiry retiree named Clarence, looked up, startled. No, sir. We're still eating." Hargrove's eyes narrowed. "Looks like you're done to me. I need this table." Clarence's wife, Evelyn, set her fork down, her expression tightening. "Officer, we're not finished. There's a wait list. You can put your name on it like everyone else." The diner went quiet. Heads turned. Hargrove's face reddened, a flush creeping up his neck. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially not here, not by people like them. "You don't tell me what to do," he snapped, his hand resting on the holster at his hip. "Move, Aisha." Seated a few tables away, felt the air shift. She'd seen this before too many times. The way Hargrove's hand hovered over his gun, the way his voice dripped with entitlement. It wasn't just about a table. It was about power, about asserting dominance in a world he believed belonged to him. She glanced at Maya, who had pulled out her earbuds, her eyes wide with concern. "Mom," Maya whispered. "He's gonna do something stupid." Aisha's jaw tightened. She didn't want to get involved, not tonight. Not when she was off the clock. Not when she just wanted to be a mom for once. But she couldn't sit by and watch this unfold. She stood, her chair scraping against the floor, and walked toward the confrontation. "Officer," she said, her voice calm but firm, cutting through the tension like a blade. "Is there a problem here?" Hargrove turned, his eyes locking onto Aisha. For a split second, he seemed to register her authority the way she carried herself, the way her gaze didn't waver. But then his expression hardened, and something uglier flickered across his face. He didn't know who she was, didn't care. All he saw was a black woman, daring to interrupt him. "Who the hell are you?" he barked, stepping closer. The diner was silent now, every eye on them. "I'm someone who knows you don't get to bully people out of their seats," Aisha said, her tone steady, but laced with steel. "There's a wait list. Use it." Hargrove's face twisted into a sneer. "You don't get to tell me how to do my job. Lady." He took another step, closing the distance between them, his hand still on his holster. "Back off, or we're gonna have a problem." The room seemed to hold its breath. Clarence and Evelyn sat frozen, their hands clasped under the table. Maya gripped her phone, her thumb hovering over the record button. Aisha didn't flinch, but her heart was pounding. She knew men like Hargrove, knew the danger of a bruised ego in a man with a gun. "I'm not backing off," Aisha said, her voice low but unwavering. "You're out of line, officer. You don't get to intimidate people because you're having a bad day." Hargrove's eyes flashed with rage. "You think you're tough," he spat. "You think you can talk to me like that?" In one swift motion, he unholstered his service weapon, leveling it at Aisha's chest. "Sit down, or I'll make you—" A collective gasp rippled through the diner. Maya let out a choked cry, her phone clattering to the table as she started recording. Clarence stood, his hands raised, pleading, "Officer, please, don't do this." Aisha's breath caught, but she didn't move. She stared down the barrel of the gun, her heart thundering in her chest. She'd faced threats before, anonymous letters, whispered insults, even a brick through her office window. But this was different. This was a loaded gun, inches from her heart, held by a man whose eyes burned with hatred. "Do it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Pull the trigger. Show everyone who you really are." The words hung in the air, a challenge and a dare. Hargrove's hand trembled, his finger hovering over the trigger. For a moment, it seemed like he might actually do it, like the rage inside him was too big to contain. But then, something shifted. Maybe it was the weight of every eye in the room, or the faint sound of Maya's phone capturing every second. Maybe it was the realization that he was crossing a line he couldn't come back from. He lowered the gun, his face a mask of fury and humiliation. "You're gonna regret this," he snarled, holstering his weapon. He turned and stormed out of the diner, the door slamming behind him. The room exhaled. Evelyn burst into tears, clinging to Clarence. Maya rushed to her mother's side, her hands shaking as she hugged her. "Mom, are you okay?" "Oh my God, are you okay?" Aisha nodded, her legs unsteady but her resolve unbroken. "I'm fine, baby," she said, pulling Maya close. But she wasn't fine. Her chest burned with a mix of fear and fury, and her mind was already racing ahead to what came next. She knew Hargrove's type. He wouldn't let this go, and neither would she. By the next morning, the incident was everywhere. Maya's video, posted to X, had gone viral overnight, racking up millions of views. The shaky footage of Hargrove pointing his gun at Aisha, his face contorted with rage, was inescapable. News outlets picked it up, headlines screaming "racist cop threatens black woman over diner table dispute." Pundits debated, activists rallied, and the public's outrage grew with every share, every retweet. Aisha sat in her office at the Internal Affairs Division, her desk cluttered with case files and a cooling cup of coffee. She hadn't slept. The image of Hargrove's gun was seared into her mind, and the weight of the moment pressed down on her. She'd spent her career fighting for justice. But this was personal. This wasn't just about her. It was about every black person who'd ever been made to feel small. every moment of fear and indignity that went unpunished. Her phone buzzed with messages of support and threats. She ignored them all, focusing instead on the personnel file in front of her. Daniel Hargrove, 15 years on the force, a history of complaints for excessive force, racial profiling, and insubordination. Most had been swept under the rug, dismissed for lack of evidence or settled quietly. Aisha's jaw clenched. Not this time. Her deputy, Marcus Reed, knocked and entered, his face grim. "Chief wants to see you. Now." Aisha nodded, steeling herself. She knew what was coming, a meeting with Chief Raymond Carter, a man who'd always walked a fine line between reform and protecting his own. She grabbed Hargrove's file and headed to the chief's office, her heels clicking against the polished floor. Carter was waiting behind his desk, his face etched with exhaustion. He gestured for Aisha to sit. "Dr. Coleman," he began, "this is a mess. A goddamn mess." "It's more than a mess, Chief," Aisha said, her voice steady. "It's a crime. Hargrove pulled a gun on me, a civilian, over a seating dispute. He's a danger to the public." Carter rubbed his temples. "I've seen the video. The whole damn world has. But Hargrove's got friends in the union, and they're already circling the wagons. They're saying he was provoked, that you escalated the situation." Aisha's eyes narrowed. "Provoked, I told him to follow the rules like everyone else. If that's provocation, then maybe he shouldn't be carrying a badge." Carter sighed. "I'm not defending him, Aisha. But you know how this works. We need to tread carefully. The union's already threatening a walkout, and the mayor's breathing down my neck." Aisha leaned forward, her voice low and fierce. "I don't care about the union or the mayor. I care about the fact that a man who's supposed to protect this city pointed a gun at me because he didn't like being told no. You think that's acceptable? You think that's defensible?" Carter met her gaze, and for a moment, she saw the weight of his position, the impossible balance of politics and justice. "No," he said finally, "it's not. But we need to do this by the book. Internal Affairs will investigate. But it's going to take time. Time." Aisha's voice rose, sharp with disbelief. "That man is a walking liability. You saw the video. The public saw it. You let him stay on the street, and you're telling every person in this city that his badge matters more than their safety." Carter's jaw tightened. "What do you want, Aisha?" His head on a platter. "I want him fired," she said without hesitation. "Today, no paid leave, no desk duty. Fired." The room was silent, the weight of her words hanging between them. Carter leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled. "You're asking for a fight. I'm asking for justice." Aisha shot back. "And if you won't give it, I'll make sure the world knows why." The investigation moved faster than anyone expected, fueled by public pressure and the unrelenting spotlight of the viral video. Aisha worked around the clock, pulling Hargrove's records, interviewing witnesses from the diner, and building a case that was airtight. Every complaint, every incident, every whisper of misconduct was laid bare. Hargrove's career was a house of cards, and Aisha was ready to pull it down. Hargrove, meanwhile, was unraveling. Holed up in his apartment, he raged against the woke mob on X, posting rants about being canceled and claiming Aisha had played the race card. His supporters, mostly fellow officers and a handful of online trolls, echoed his grievances, but their voices were drowned out by the tidal wave of public outrage. Protests erupted outside the police headquarters, with signs reading, "Fire Hargrove, now, and no justice. No peace." The hearing was set for a week later, a formality that felt anything but formal. The room was packed: reporters, activists, community leaders, and a few of Hargrove's defenders in uniform. Aisha sat at the front, her hands folded, her expression unreadable. Maya sat beside her, clutching her mother's hand. Hargrove took the stand, his face pale but defiant. His lawyer, a slick union rep named Paulson, argued that Hargrove had been under stress, that he'd acted out of instinct, that Aisha had antagonized him. It was a weak defense, and the room knew it. When Aisha's turn came, she stood, her voice clear and unwavering. "I'm not here to talk about my feelings," she began, her eyes sweeping the room. "I'm here to talk about facts. Officer Hargrove has a documented history of misconduct, 15 complaints in 15 years, most involving black and brown citizens. He pulled a gun on me, a civilian, because I dared to tell him to follow the same rules as everyone else. This isn't about one bad day. This is about a pattern of arrogance, entitlement, and abuse of power." She paused, letting her words sink in. "I've spent my career holding officers accountable, and I've seen what happens when we let men like Hargrove slide. They don't change, they escalate. And the next time, it might not just be a threat. It might be a bullet." The room was silent, the weight of her words undeniable. Hargrove stared at the floor, his hands clenched into fists. Paulson tried to object, but the hearing officer waved him off. When the decision came, it was swift and unequivocal. Hargrove was fired, effective immediately, his badge stripped, his pension under review. The room erupted, some in cheers, others in angry murmurs. Aisha felt a rush of relief, but it was tempered by exhaustion. This wasn't the end. It was just one battle in a war that never seemed to end. Outside the hearing, the cameras were waiting. Aisha stepped into the sunlight, Maya at her side, and faced the sea of microphones. She spoke briefly, her voice steady but tired. "This isn't about me. It's about every person who's ever been made to feel less than human because of the color of their skin. Today, we held one man accountable. Tomorrow, we keep fighting." The crowd roared, but Aisha didn't linger. She took Maya's hand and walked away, the weight of the moment still heavy on her shoulders. Back at Mama Rosa's that evening, the diner was quieter, the air softer. Clarence and Evelyn were there, and they hugged Aisha like family. The staff brought out a plate of fried chicken on the house, and for the first time in days, Aisha laughed. But as she looked at Maya, her fierce, beautiful daughter, she knew the fight wasn't over. Hargrove was gone, but the system that had enabled him wasn't. The anger, the fear, the hope, it all burned inside her, a fire that wouldn't go out. And somewhere, in the back of her mind, she heard her own voice from that night in the diner: "Show everyone who you really are." Hargrove had, and now so had she.